kids, it's Pastor Austin here with this week's Big Truth. So we're in our series of redemption, and this is week number 2 that we're talking about redemption and how God's plan from the very beginning was for him to redeem his people, to buy his people back. And we're going to see this week, in this week's guide, how did God do that? How does God reveal his plan of redemption? All right, so we got a new big truth for this week. Are you ready? This week's big truth is God is our substitute. God is our substitute. So that was God's plan from the very beginning. It was through substitution that he would redeem his people. That now you and I, that we can be in right relationship with God the Father because of substitution. So we're going to kind of talk about that and unpack that a little bit more in this short video. So where does our big truth this week come from? That God is our substitute. It's our Bible verse for this week. Our Bible verse this week is 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. So let me read it and see if you can hear where our big truth comes from this week. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 says this: "For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." All right, so listen carefully again, because this one may not say the word substitute in it, but it will help us understand what is substitution and how is God our substitute. So our Bible verse this week is 2 Corinthians 5:21, and it says this: "For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." So do you guys see that exchange that's in that verse? First of all, you have Jesus who is perfect. That's what this verse is talking about. He's talking about Jesus who was perfect, but was made to be sin. Why? For those who are sinful, that's you and me, to become the righteousness of God. There's an exchange there. In fact, it's a substitution. Instead of us having to take on the punishment of death because of our sin, Jesus took that on. And so that's called substitution. It's an exchange from one thing to another. So let me give you an example of this that will kind of unpack that a little bit further, and it'll get us into our big ideas for this week. So I've got a water bottle here that's filled with just regular old water. And so here's what I want you to do. Imagine that you're standing right here in front of me, that you're not on the other side of the video. But imagine that if I were to start spraying this water bottle everywhere, right, would you be able to reach out your hands and actually take a hold of that water? So let me just kind of do that again. So if I were to spray this water, I gotta be careful not to get on the camera, but spray this water, could you hold out your hands and hold the water in your hands? Really? Probably not. You might catch a little bit, but you couldn't. In other words, it's just not something that's possible, right? You can't spray water out and try to catch it all. It's just not possible. Well, that's how God's plan of redemption is for us. It's not possible for us to do it. In fact, that's our first big idea for this week. Our first big idea for this guide is that we cannot save ourselves. See, God's plan of redemption is his plan and only something that he can do for us. We cannot save ourselves. Just like if you were to hold out your hands, you couldn't hold on to the water. We cannot save ourselves. Second big idea for this week is that God sent Jesus to be the sinless sacrifice for us. Jesus was the perfect Lamb of God who was sent to be sin, who knew no sin, right? So that we who are sinful may become the righteousness of God. Jesus is the sinless sacrifice. Big idea number 3 is that Jesus died in our place. So he was our substitute, that he took our place on the cross. It was supposed to be our death, and he died for us. Last big idea is that substitution, this is so good, don't miss this. Substitution is final and forever. God's plan of redemption, when someone has repented of their sin, put their faith and trust in Jesus, that is final and that is forever. And that will never change. Isn't that good news? So we have a Bible story for this week that really illustrates that so well. And it's found in Genesis 22. It's the story of Abraham and Isaac. And we see that God instructed Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. You know that Abraham was a man of faith and he trusted God. And so we see that he follows in obedience to sacrifice his one and only son, Isaac. But instead, God provides a substitute. A ram in a thicket is actually sacrificed instead of his son Isaac. So there's a lot that's there, but it's a beautiful picture of substitution, how God is our substitute. So I challenge you guys as a family, read through Genesis 22 this week and let that be an illustration of our big truth that God is our substitute. Last thing, a family challenge for this week. All right, family challenge this week. Everybody gather together in the kitchen. A lot of people are at home again right now. So gather together in the kitchen and find a recipe. It can be any recipe, for dinner or for dessert, anything. And then see if there's anything that's listed as a substitute ingredient. A lot of times there'll be some things that say, well, if you don't have this on hand, you can substitute it for that. And so try to make that recipe together as a family. And again, that can be a way that you guys kind of interact around our theme, our big truth for this week is that God is our substitute. He took our place. Boys and girls, moms and dads, grandparents, I hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you next week.